Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clips. And I have a couple of things to announce before I get into a topic that I had to spend some time on in response to last week's vitamin D talk that I gave. But first of all, we have a promotion, very limited time, but it's spend a dollar, get a dollar. Now, there's some restrictions on what you can spend and get and all that sort of thing. But for example, if you spend $500, you can get a $500 credit towards something else. All right. So if you have some interest in that, send me an email at pampopper@msn.com. I will send you a document that shows you what your opportunities are. All right. So real short period of time. It's kind of fun to do this sometimes. It brings new people into our family and that sort of thing. This week, a couple things going on you want to pay attention to. One is a tour of Wellness Forum for non-members. All right, so if you're not a member and you're thinking, maybe I want to do this, but I'm not sure, I'm going to give you a tour of all of our websites and resources and engage in a half hour or so Q&A, general health questions. We're not going to try and solve your personal health problems, but you'll get an opportunity to see what being a member would be like and what your benefits would be like. And then an hour later, a free sample class for healthcare professionals. So if you're thinking of joining us this summer for the Diet and Lifestyle Intervention course, that fabulous 15-module course, that's one of the things you could buy and get credit for. All right, just saying. Then maybe you want to participate in that class too. The next session on Forming Your Tribe, June 8th at 9 p.m., how we're going to survive all that's coming. And also, I have a workshop coming up that I think some of you might be interested in, and you could get this free as part of the buy one, get one, the Navigating the Healthcare System, which is designed for the person. That's on June 14th, and it's for people who are saying, I know I can't avoid interacting with doctors, so what should I do? What should I say? What should I allow, not allow, that sort of thing. So if you're interested in that, that's coming up too. All right, so I mentioned before we had to return to the vitamin D thing again. In response to my video last week, which I cited studies showing that vitamin D is useless for COVID, many of you wrote to me about a video made by Dr. John Campbell in the UK that supposedly showed benefit from taking vitamin D supplements. Now, I have been a cautious fan of Dr. Campbell for a variety of reasons. He's been right about some issues, not so much on others, but in the interest of learning, I watched the video. And after I did, my conclusion was that the people who sent me this link and did not watch the video and certainly didn't look up the study he was referring to, because it could possibly be talking about vitamin D the way they were if they had. The study reported no benefit at all. So here's the real story. The authors of the study Campbell reported on state that humans produce 25,000 international units of vitamin D when exposed to sunlight for relatively short periods of time. Well, the number is actually between 10 and 20,000 units, and it's dependent on skin color, time of day, and a lot of other factors, but I'm going to put that aside as not being as important as some other things. The authors also state the deficiency is common, which is not actually true. Deficiencies are diagnosed due to changing reference ranges. We call that disease mongering, and both the supplement promoters and the drug companies are very good at this. You just keep lowering the threshold for diagnosis, and more people need whatever it is that you're selling. The other thing is the tests are wildly inaccurate for vitamin D, because they fail to account for time of day the sample is taken. Vitamin D fluctuates in a pretty predictable pattern throughout the day in terms of levels in your body. So if you start reading the vitamin D studies, they have not accounted for that whatsoever. And there are articles posted in our library about that topic. The authors also write, and Campbell dutifully reports, that low vitamin D levels are correlated with a long list of diseases. This is true, but correlation should never be confused with a cause and effect relationship. And so, if we were going to use correlation in countries where women are getting more driver's licenses, the breast cancer rate's going up. So I suppose using that logic, we would take driver's licenses away from women to protect them against breast cancer, but I think you would not agree with that, right? In the case of vitamin D, a growing body of evidence is showing that what we're really seeing is something called reverse causation. People get sick, their vitamin D levels go down. When they recover, vitamin D levels return to normal without any intervention. And an example of this, and there are hundreds, is an emergency room recorded the vitamin D levels of hyperglycemic patients, so severely hyperglycemic they had to seek treatment in the emergency room. When they arrived, their vitamin D level was 12.3, and it went up to over 28 just by resolving the hyperglycemic state. In other words, when their glucose levels returned to normal, their vitamin D levels were above what used to be considered normal. So they're very inconvenient to the fake vitamin D hypothesis, but the medical literature is very strongly in support of the reverse causation situation. So I'm going to go back to the study in question. The authors conducted a 7-year study on patients admitted to a psychiatric facility in Southern Ohio. The patients were given oral doses of 5 to 50,000 international units of vitamin D daily. The authors note that they screen all patients for vitamin D status because low levels have been correlated with depression. And Campbell notes that this should be going on everywhere. And again, that correlation thing. Vitamin D levels for 418 patients who are in the institution at the end of the study were between 74.4 and 384.8, over 35 times what used to be considered normal before the vitamin D hoax was invented. The mean level was 118.9. Patients taking 10,000 international units daily reached 97, and then they plateaued. People who weren't given vitamin D, their blood levels averaged 27.1, 3 times what used to be, almost 3 times what used to be considered normal, but certainly would be considered normal before this whole thing began. The outcome measured wasn't health improvement. I mean, they noted that 3 psoriasis patients got better, but the outcome measured was plasma levels and safety. And the evidence of safety presented was that calcium levels remained normal. That's it. Gosh, if your calcium levels don't increase too much while taking horse-like doses of a hormone, because it's a hormone, not a vitamin, you're good to go. And my answer to that is, you're kidding me. And now you can understand why I'm saying, how would anybody who understood this issue send me this video as evidence that I should change my mind about vitamin D? And you certainly couldn't have looked at the study. In response to this ridiculousness, Campbell says that this testing and administration of horse-like doses should become more widespread. And he cites the low doses recommended by the National Health Service in the UK as just being abysmal. He says that the main strengths of the study were that the authors had no conflicts and that no outside funding was used. Well, I'm glad you could find something positive to say, because the rest of it's rubbish. Not a medical term, I know, but I think it's the one that would pertain to this most of all. And then he goes on to say that, gosh, if he'd known about the benefits of vitamin D back in the day, he could have saved lots of people from suffering. Suffering what? Low blood levels compared to horse-like dose blood levels? I mean, I don't even know how to explain how ludicrous this entire scenario is. It's like you've gone to the land of Oz, right? So anyway, I'll just conclude by saying this. If one of the major shortcomings of medicine is the thought that pretty blood work equals health. That's the rationale for taking statin drugs and diabetes medications and immunosuppressant drugs for autoimmune patients. But the reality is that most people who focus only on achieving ever-changing lab results that benefit drug and supplement companies generally are not achieving health. And by the way, I'm not saying you should never take drugs or you should never take a supplement. What I'm saying is that everybody knows that everybody take this thing. That's what is ludicrous. So I guess I'll just say I'm flabbergasted. All right, I'm just flabbergasted that any person would actually watch this video or read this study and think that you would convince a person who's presented a lot of evidence showing that this is a hoax, right? Maybe there's something out there, but this would not be it. So if you're a healthcare professional who watched this video and thought it was swell, you probably need to go into our training program so you don't hurt people. And if you're a consumer who watched this video and thought it was swell, you need to rethink your strategy. And that's just as simple as I can make it. So anyway, hopefully that clarifies it. I won't do another video on this. I've put dozens of articles in our library. We have a single topic workshop on vitamin D. It comes up in our Q&As. It's an issue of huge confusion. There's no question about it, but the confusion is driven by people who profit from prescribing vitamin D. Either they're selling it or they are constantly monitoring people and all that sort of. It's exhausting, right? Okay, so I hope this helps to clarify it. And as usual, pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy watching it. And I'll be back to you next week with more news.